Hey, it's Liberty, and today I'm going to be talking about my top 10 books that I read in 2022. Now, this video would have been sooner, but I got really ill at Christmas. The worst cold of my life, worse than the Rona. It was really, really, really bad. Anyway, I think I had an average-ish reading year. Reading year definitely got better as I went on. Anyway, I'm going to break this down by genre. I'm not going to bother trying to rank them. Yeah, if you want to skip around, do. If you like this, do give it a thumbs up. I make videos all about books, history, personality, culture, etc. So do check those out and subscribe if you would like to. I'm going to get straight into it, and I'm going to start with a genre that appeared more often towards the end of the year, which is mysteries and thrillers. First is The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. I had read The Hunting Party and really enjoyed it, but this, in my opinion, was better. This novel is set in an apartment complex in Paris, and Jess is our sort of main character we follow, and she arrives at the building to stay with her brother. When she gets there, however, he is not there. His wallet and keys are, however, and she struggles to get even in the building at first. And this is just really strange, and she's broke, she hasn't got a job. She left her job. She's alone in a strange city. The apartment seems like something which is really fancy, and, her brother's a journalist who he mainly does, restaurant and those kinds of reviews, so something's off with this. She decides to stay in the apartment and try and work out what's happened to her brother. She meets all of Ben's neighbours, and she finds this very strange collection of people that all have things to hide. There's an 18-year-old girl who's living with her friend. There's an alcoholic guy his marriage is crumbling. Someone who appears to be a nice guy, and then this sort of Parisian socialite. They are all suspects to her. I really love books like this when you get to experience everyone's points of view, and I think it works particularly well with thrillers because you get to slowly piece together every sort of little clue from each person's point of view. There was no way I was going to guess what had happened and what was happening and was going to happen at the end. The characters were all fantastically written. They were all flawed and morally grey, and there's so much in this book you can really sink your teeth into. Ben's disappearance was, of course, part of a wider mystery that Jess sort of had to untangle with some help from one of Ben's newspaper colleagues. This really made me want to go and visit Paris because you really get Jess trying to explore and, make her way around a city she doesn't know at all. And that's really exciting, obviously, without the, potential crimes that are going on. But Jess was a great character to empathise with. I really enjoy Lucy Foley's writing, and I will be working my way through the rest of her novels, I think, next year. The next thriller I'm going to talk about is The Maid by Nita Prose. And I think I've talked about this book before, but it's another murder mystery and also contemporary, but this time set in New York City. It follows the titular maid, who is Molly, and she works at the Regency Grand Hotel. Now, she's very good at her job. She's very thorough and dedicated, and she used to live with her grandmother, who has since died. Molly is not good in social situations. She doesn't, she very much takes people at face value. She's not, good at detecting sarcasm or anything like that. Basically, she's neurodivergent. Her grandmother used to help a lot with this, give her these rules for her to live by and to help her sort of navigate the world. But obviously now she's gone, Molly has to figure things out on her own. When she discovers one of the hotel's regulars is dead in his bed, her personality doesn't exactly help, the police warm to her. And she has to navigate various people's, people trying to manipulate her, people's preconceptions, people's prejudices. And, she really holds the key to what happened because she sees and remembers way more than, anyone would imagine she would. I love Molly as a character. Some of the things that sort of had talked about in her past, heartbreaking. And to watch her sort of navigate this world and find this found family was really, really, it made me nervous, but it was heartwarming, and I'm so glad I read this book. It was fantastic. I feel like it's rare to follow neurodivergent characters in the thriller mystery genre that are sort of the main characters. It becomes really clear to you as a reader what happened, and you're sort of watching Molly piece it all together and watch Molly try and get herself out of sticky situations because obviously various people think she's involved, and you start to question, wait, is she involved somehow? Like, it's all about grey areas and truth and lies. It's fantastic. And my final mystery recommendation, I mean, really it's a series, because I've read 2 and I'm reading the 3rd and I really love it. It's The Body in the Garden. We've got an amateur detective set in the Regency area. I think we're even in 1818. Our detective is Lily Adler and she is 27 years old. She's a widower. Her husband has been sort of dead for 2 years, so she's sort of in half mourning. It's interesting because I didn't realise like half mourning was a thing. She wears a lot of lilac. She's just moved to London with the help of her sort of in-laws. She's attending her first ball in 2 years, you know, that's held by her best friend. And she overhears a confrontation when she's out for a walk in the garden and then hears a gunshot and finds someone's been murdered. She takes it upon herself to try and sort of solve the mystery when the Bow Street runners sort of get paid off to drop the case. And it's so interesting because the Bow Street runners are obviously, you know, the foundation, the start of the police force in Britain. And it's not something I know too much about. We follow one of them in particular who's very not keen to drop the case either. We're also introduced to the childhood friend of Lily's husband, Captain Jack. And there are so many suspects and people involved. Like there's this one character, Ophelia, who's sort of the childhood friend of the deceased. They don't know that they can trust her initially, and she's definitely got some secrets, but that trio was really the interactions between Lily, Ophelia and Jack. They have such chemistry together as characters. Obviously, first novel in a series, most people know where they are in Regency England. One thing that slightly annoyed me was that they kept talking about how amazing Lily was, and she is amazing. It definitely gets better in the subsequent books, and that was literally my only complaint. I really enjoyed both books. I think with the second book, I worked out exactly who'd done it and why really, really, really early on. So for me, the plot of the first book was more enjoyable purely because, you know, second one, I was just, you know, I was waiting for Lily to work it out. Once I finish this third book, I think I'm just gonna have to wait for more to be written and released, but massive fan of this series now. Next, I've got my fantasy read I'm going to talk about, which really swept me away, which was obviously The Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb. If you like fantasy, you'll love Robin Hobb. This is the second trilogy set in her sort of realm of the Elderlings. The trilogy is set in the south of the world, mostly at Bingtown, where a bunch of these families settled many years before, and the original trader families, they all have these live ships. Essentially, they're made out of special wood where once 3 generations of a family die on deck, it comes to life, and, you know, the whole... you know, the figurehead comes to life and speaks and everything like that. We follow quite a few characters in this novel, but mostly Althea, who is the daughter of a trader, and she has lived her whole life basically on ship with her father, expecting to inherit the live ship. Obviously, they have a great relationship. She doesn't want him to die or anything, but unfortunately, he gets persuaded to leave it to Althea's sister instead, and so the ship falls under her brother-in-law's purview, which... he's just an awful man. But so you follow Althea and then also her nephew, Wintro, who just wanted to become a priest and gets called back home to be sort of a part of this legacy, which she doesn't initially want to be a part of. So this poor live ship, the Vivacia, is just having a really rough time of it. But you also follow this sort of pirate king, and you follow Wintro's sister, who's just, you think is this vapid girl, but actually there's so much more to her than that. Personally, Althea and Wintro have the best points of views that I'm sort of the most invested in, but it's so good. Crazy world building, characters that I just feel so bonded to at this point, which is ridiculous because they're not real. But there's a lot of things happening politically in this world as well, which sort of draw you in. Yeah, I mean, I'm currently reading the second book and I've just found out where these live ships, like where the wood from the live ships comes from, and I want to cry a little bit. Next is my historical fiction offerings, and they're both Regency. I do not apologise for that. I clearly read a lot of Regency this year, but they're very, very different. The first is A Lady's Guide to Fortune Hunting. This novel is centred around Kitty Talbot. I think I've talked about this before. You know, her parents are both dead, and so she's got a lot of younger siblings to take care of, and you know, they're in a lot of debt. They're 3 months away from having their house taken away from them and, you know, being destitute. And so she sort of gets sponsored by one of her mother's sort of family friends, the London social season, so she can go and get a husband because there is no way for women to make their own money at this time. She knows, she's very practical. she knows she's going to have to marry a rich man. And so she goes and takes one of her younger siblings with her, and they go and have this social season. And thanks to the younger sibling that she takes with her, Cecily, she meets an old school friend of hers who happens to be the daughter. You know, their family's very, very rich. So Kitty sets her sights on the younger son. Lord Radcliffe knows exactly what Kitty's about. She is very much determined to have his younger brother as her husband, and he's determined to stop her. And their chemistry is great. Kitty and Lord Radcliffe. I mean, you can sort of predict where it's going, but to watch that journey, I really enjoyed myself. And all of the characters, you know, Cecily, everyone had their own little story arc. Their sort of aunt who is sponsoring their social season, she used to be an actress. And so she's sort of happy that they get this opportunity to be part of like high society, because that was not what any of them were expecting. And yet she's worried because so many of these men might recognize her from her time on the stage. So there's a lot going on, and it's action-packed and romance-packed and really just an enjoyable read. I had a great time. I highly recommend it. My second Regency romp was Infamous by Lex Croucher. I've been waiting for this book to come out. I loved Reputation, but I have to say Infamous edged it out for me. It stole my heart. The main character of Infamous is Edith, or Eddie Miller, and she and her best friend Rose, I mean, they've known each other they've done everything together. They, you know, climb trees, threw grapes at boys, snuck alcohol into their little tree house, practiced kissing, everything. Now they're 22 years old, and so people are starting to talk to them about marriage, which is something that Eddie is just not wanting to think about, but Rose very much is. And so that is making Eddie freak out. Rose very much shines at these sort of society events and balls, and Eddie is just that's not for her. She's a writer, she wants to be published. And she meets sort of one of her idols, Nash Nicholson, who is one of Lord Byron's sort of rivals. He's a poet. And she finds herself in sort of a world that she never would have imagined, full of other writers and artists and creatives, free spirits. It's very hedonistic. And she gets invited to Nash's sort of very much gothic and crumbling family estate for this sort of party away. And she thinks, I'm going to finish my novel, and then Nash is going to help me get published. And it's literally like it's in the middle of a lake on an island. This hedonistic life that Nash and his friends lead, Eddie, you know, thinks this is something that's going to be great, and she thinks she can keep up, but Rose isn't exactly enamored with it. Eddie finds herself in more than one sticky situation. I love these two, Eddie and Rose. I love their relationship, their friendship, their bond. The cast of characters that were assembled in this little gothic castle were just wonderfully written. I love and hate Nash in equal measure. I'm a writer myself, so I love reading about, you know, the writing process. I love reading about writers. Eddie and Rose go through various different struggles through the process of this novel, and my heart burned for them at these moments. Honestly, I had 2 book hangovers this year. One was The Ship of Magic and the other was Infamous. So this is, you know, high praise. We're talking about top 2 books of the year. This book has amazing queer representation as well. Oh, honestly, I highly recommend this. Honestly, with books I love, I try not to say too much about them because I don't want to spoil it. I want you to experience it all. But if you think you will enjoy it based on this description, oh God, you definitely will. You will not regret it. Next, I'm going to talk about the YA books that I enjoyed in 2022. And first up is Better Than the Movies. This is a YA rom-com, literally. The main character is Liz, and she's a dreamer. She's a romantic. She had this, you know, crush when she was in middle school or whatever, I think they call it in America. His name is Michael, and he left and he's back in town for his senior year. Liz is determined that she is going to tell him how she feels this time and, you know, get the guy and have the prom and have the experience that she's always dreamed of. He never really saw her that way when she was younger, but she enlists the help of her next door neighbour, Wes, to make it happen because Michael and Wes have really hit it off. So Wes is very much her in. Liz and Wes, they sort of have an antagonistic relationship, loads of pranks, loads of messing with each other. So Liz and Wes decide to fake date to get Michael to sort of notice Liz as a sort of desirable human. But then Liz, of course, realises that Wes is a really nice guy and things start to develop in that direction. Obviously, it's clear what's going to happen from the synopsis, but I really enjoyed the ride. I don't normally enjoy romance, but this was sweet but not too saccharine. Their relationship was great, the two of them. I really love it when characters are forced to challenge their preconceptions about other people. There was so much more to love as well. For example, Liz, she has a relationship with her stepmother that really is developing throughout this novel. As it's her senior year, she always dreamed that she would have all these experiences with her mother, but because her mother's dead, she's conflicted about, you know, going through this with her stepmother, and there's that relationship to work out. Her stepmother's lovely, she's just obviously struggling, and that was really well written and handled beautifully. The reason Liz finds comfort in rom-coms is she used to watch them with her mother. It adds a twist to something that normally would have been a cliche. Next up, we have The Nobleman's Guide to Scandal and Shipwrecks by Mackenzie Lee. Now, this is the third book, and I think the last one in the Montague siblings trilogy, and this is all about Adrian, who was just born when the first two books happened, and he's grown up with no siblings, or thinking he has no siblings, thinking he's going to be the heir to his father's estate, to take up his seat in the House of Lords. His mother has sadly died, and he has been left by her this like half of a spyglass. In his attempts to work out what the hell it is, what it has to do with his mother's death, he comes across his brother, Monty. Together they end up travelling across the world, meeting up with Felicity, who's their sister, and it is quite an adventure. It's so interesting because he is someone who's got a lot of anxiety. I think the way that was demonstrated throughout the novel, the sort of physical manifestations of that, was really well done. But yet he's anonymously writing these, you know, reformist political pamphlets. Anonymously, of course. So he's a really great character, and he's so young. So yeah, the adventure aspect of the story was great. It was fantastic to see these characters 18 years down the line and seeing who this baby turned into. Adrian is different from Monty in the sense that Monty was very much running from all the responsibilities. He didn't want to be his father's heir. Adrian is not opposed to that. He just wants to do it his way. So the contrast between them, their relationship was really interesting because you sort of get the most of the two of them out of the three. I'm sad because I think that's going to be it from the Montague siblings, but it was a good run. The last YA book I'm going to talk about is The One by Kira Cass. Now this is the third book in a trilogy. If you like the sound of the trilogy, go for it. But essentially this is a YA dystopian novel. It's got a caste system. This is post-World War III America. The numbered caste system is what we've got this time. And America Singh is our main character, and she's a 5, which is the performer caste. And there are 8 castes in total, so she's sort of mid to lower end of things. There's very little scope for changing your caste, except there's this once in a lifetime opportunity that happens where the Prince Maxon, has decided he's going to do the selection, which is where all the women who want to marry him basically like apply to marry him, and he picks a bunch and they sort of have a competition, and the winner ends up as his wife. America has sort of been secretly dating this 6, and she applies because, you know, she's like, oh, I can get, you know, an increase in my status, I get money, my parents get an allowance for loss of earnings, and then I can get married to the love of my life. And then when she gets there, she, you know, her world sort of gets turned upside down in a way, becomes very much a love triangle. And that is not really the interesting part. I am not really very interested in the love interest. What I am interested in, which is why I love the second and third book so much, is the rebellion against this system. Because while we have a monarchy, we've got the caste system, there of course are people who want to dismantle that. And in books 2 and 3, you really get to know some prominent rebels, and America and the Prince sort of get entangled in this rebellion. And that part is very, very interesting because dystopian fiction was huge in YA for a long time, and it seems to have completely disappeared. But it's a fantastic genre, and I think it has a lot to offer, especially when the world looks like it's going the way of a dystopian novel. I have one contemporary book on this list, and this is Kim Ji-young, born 1982. This novel is called that because the most common name for a Korean woman born in the 80s was Kim Ji-young, and this sort of is a representation of everything women of that generation in South Korea had to go through, like right from birth all the way through their whole lives, the discrimination that they had to face. Feminism in South Korea isn't where it is in the West. So much so that a female K-pop idol who was recommending this book or pictured reading this book, I can't remember it which one it was. Literally, her male fans started to burn her photo cards. It was really bizarre. And I'm really glad I read it because it was fascinating. You sort of follow this woman right from birth and the way that you see girls and boys are treated differently and way they are raised differently through to her teenage years, where you sort of see the effect of, sexualization on young girls and how that affects them throughout their life, and going into their 20s and the workplace and the sexual harassment and discrimination. And then if they become wives and mothers, that's a whole other kettle of fish, and it just never ends, and it's just this oppressive and it was fascinating to read and shocking. And we take for granted so much, especially in this country or in America. We take for granted a lot of the things that people and attitudes that are, we've still got a long way to go, but some attitudes definitely have shifted in the last 30 years, and you forget sometimes that not every country is like that. And so this was a big reminder about that. So those were my top 10 favourite books of 2022. Have you read any of these? Did you enjoy them? What was your top book of 2022? Do let me know. I'm planning on trying to read more non-fiction this year and really got into thrillers and mysteries. So I might actually be reading a lot more of those, and fantasy, back to my loves. So that's going to be my 2023. I sadly did not hit my 40 reading goal. I got 38. You know what? It's about the journey, not the destination. And I had fun. So I'm counting that as a win. So everybody, Happy New Year and happy reading.